Hello. Good evening, everyone. How are you? It is late, or apparently for some of you, it's the end of day in Australia. How exciting it is to have you guys from all over the world joining me. I was over hanging out with Ian and his amazing group. Um, And I was laying down with my kiddo who's sick and debating if I was going to do my live tonight because I'm actually feeling a little under the weather. But then I saw some of you here waiting, and I thought, you know what? Let's go hang out for a little bit and talk about this amazing day today because I think this trial is so entertaining that I cannot look away. I think today was like giving me life because I had a really tough day at work. I pop into Emily D. Baker's stream here and there when I'm taking breaks from drafting, actor agreements or production agreements. So it's really fun. Let me know where you're coming in from. I'm getting to know some of you, so I'd love to know where you guys live, what part of the world you're coming in from. Today was more defense experts in the Gwyneth Paltrow trial. I don't know about you, but every day I feel more and more confident in my position that I think Gwyneth Paltrow is telling the truth here. I mean, she has not wavered from her story. I think everything that's coming out is showing that she is telling the truth. Um, she has some excellent experts. I mean, Professor Van Gogh today, I mean, he was just unflappable. This man could not uh, be moved from his position, and plaintiff's counsel. What is his name? Bueller, the taller guy who's just bumbling everywhere today. I mean, I was just like, please stop yourself. And I am and then the doctor who testified after him, um there was one in between them, I think, that I just skipped because I didn't think he was that helpful. So let's start with a quick summary of where we are, right? So yesterday, Terry Sanderson testified, and let me give a quick, very small summary. I think everybody here, I recognize everybody's name. I think everybody knows. But for the replay crew, in case anyone doesn't know, this is the Gwyneth Paltrow ski trial. If you're coming in hot for the first time because you're wondering what is happening with Gwyneth Paltrow and why is she in trial and why hasn't she settled, I think they don't want to settle. I think he didn't want to settle because he wanted his day of fame. I think, sorry, if she might not have wanted to settle because she didn't want to be known as this A-list actress who would leave an injured old man behind. And I really don't think anyone except Ramon, the one eyewitness, right, for Terry Sanderson, states that she bolted away. But nobody has supported that position that she bolted away. So in 2016, there was a ski accident in Deer Valley. Terry Sanderson claims that Gwyneth Paltrow plowed him down. He went face down. He suffered 4 broken ribs, severe brain damage. And 7 years later, yes, it's been 7 years, right? Because he waited 3 years right before the statute of limitations ran out to file his claim. And so he originally filed for 3.1 million on this hit and run claim that she, like a car accident, right? Like she hit him and she left. The judge dismissed that and said, nope, there's just negligence here. So that claim went down to 300,000, but in opening statements, they're asking for $3.2 million, right? And that's what they're asking for. I think there's pain and suffering. There's, um, his claim is that he has completely changed and lost who he was. His daughters claim that he is a different person now, but some people refute that and say, no, he was always kind of impatient and angry and not a, very nice person. And that a lot of the, illnesses or impairments that he's claiming might have come from his many, many prior medical conditions. And we're not here to, make judgments as to what those conditions are, and to, say anything about them, because I understand from today that he has been a cancer survivor, and, my dad as well. So I do not want to say anything about that. But I will say that people who have prior medical conditions, it's possible that some of his medical issues might be connected to that, right? I don't think anyone can say that everything is due to this collision with Gwyneth Paltrow. And it's very interesting, right? Because yesterday on the stand, his attorney asked, do you blame Gwyneth Paltrow for everything that has happened to you in the last 7 years? And he said, absolutely. It was very, very, I would say, I don't know. It felt very weird. I mean, there's the fact that he has not been sitting in the courtroom for the last week, even though Gwyneth Paltrow has been sitting there this entire time. And I've said this, I am an attorney in Hollywood. I've represented some very, very high level actors. And I don't know that most of them would be sitting in court day in and day out, but she's giving the court the respect to do that. The jury is sitting there every day for Terry Sanderson's benefit, right? He's the one who brought this lawsuit, so they're sitting there every day for him. His attorneys have explained it away by saying, well, he really can't take criticism. He doesn't want to hear all the bad things that his daughters are going to say about him. But he hasn't sat in when all of his experts have been speaking. But when he did come in to sit in the courtroom, when Gwyneth Paltrow was testifying, and then he sat in this different chair so that he was like directly looking at her, and he was like kind of smirking and leering, and it was just like kind of creepy. I don't know. You guys let me know. Like, did you get that same feeling? I think as humans, we can use our common sense and just look at the information in front of us. And he just portrays himself as a not very trustworthy, plaintiff. There's a lot of mentions of women in his life. I mean, this lady and that lady, and it seems strange to me. Oh, Deanna, you're saying he was taking anger management classes before the ski accident. Interesting, right? So, them saying that his anger issues came from this collision with Gwyneth Paltrow seems really far-fetched in my mind, right? Thank you for all of you who are coming in from Runkle's channel. He's so supportive and kind to me. I just started my channel about just a few months ago, and I hit 20,000 on last Friday. And this has been such a dream come true, because I wanted to be a storyteller and a novelist when I went to undergrad, but because of being an immigrant and having parents who don't speak English and younger siblings, I went to law school to take care of them. And I've loved being an attorney. I still love being an attorney, but I decided I wanted to do something that was creative and create a community where I could help people feel a little better about themselves. This feeling of, when you go on social media, you always feel like, oh my gosh, those people have such perfect lives, or celebrities in Hollywood have such perfect lives. And I just wanted to kind of pull back the veil and show you guys that actually most celebrities are incredibly unhappy, even though they're living in these, huge $10 million houses up in Bel Air. It just doesn't matter. It's remembering that we're all born perfect, right? And that we don't have to look outside of ourselves. So that's kind of why I started this channel. I do a lot of videos on Hollywood breaking stories and giving a legal analysis on what I think is happening behind the scenes. So let's go into the test, the witnesses for today. I think it was so interesting because this first expert was just amazing. I mean, he was like invincible. Let me, oh, here. Let's do this.
Case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Thank you.
And then take a seat here and adjust your microphone, and then please state your full name and spell it all out for us. Thank you.
My name is Irving Scher, IRVING. Last name is SCHER.
Thank you for being with us here today, Dr. Scher. Let's begin by just asking you what you understand your role here to be today.
To teach the jury about biomechanical engineering related to snow sports, in particular skiing.
And do you have an understanding of what plaintiff's biomechanical expert, Dr. Boehm, has said about this case?
I have. I've read his deposition testimony and his trial testimony. So I do understand what he's saying in the case, yes.
Okay, and you have opinions about his testimony, is that right?
That is correct. I've analyzed his biomechanical engineering analysis.
So the jury will get to hear your response to his analysis.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So before we get to that, let's talk about your background and training so they understand why you and not me are on the stand.
Sure.
Where did you go to school?
I did my bachelor's of science and engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. I majored in mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. And then after undergrad, I moved west and I got my master's and my PhD at UC Berkeley in the mechanical engineering department. And I had two disciplines that I specialized in. One was called dynamic systems. That's how objects move in space when forces are applied to them. And the other is biomechanical engineering. And that is the application of physics and engineering to the human body, in particular, looking at how people get injured and how to prevent injuries.
And did you do a PhD thesis?
I
Can you explain what you worked on?
Sure. I was the last in a line of what we called skiologists. I studied the biomechanics of alpine skiing. I created load cells. So those are devices that measure the forces. And I put them in between the skis and the bindings. And I had different instrumentation on skiers. And it was the first time, or at least that I'm aware of, that anyone in the scientific community was able to measure the forces and the body motions of skiers from the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. And I did this with beginners, people who had only skied 2 or 3 days in their whole life, all the way up to professional racers. And so that's what I got my PhD in.
And this is actually measurements on the slope as people are skiing.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm measuring the forces applied to the person and their body motions as they're skiing. Well, and falling. We did have falls as well.
Right. And so this is not just calculations in some ivory tower, but you're actually out in the field looking at
hands-on work, which is quite difficult when you have electronics and snow and water. It was challenging for sure.
And
he's very smart.
Do any teaching?
I did teach. After I graduated with my PhD, I did a small postdoc in the biology department at Berkeley. And then after that, while I was working for a company, I taught at the University of Southern California. I was in the physical therapy department, on the medical campus, and I taught Intro to Biomechanics, and I also did research there at USC. And then I moved, I now live in Seattle, and I'm at the University of Washington. I have an affiliate professorship there. I'm an associate professor.
He's a
At the
professor.
University of
Let's
Washington,
remember that because
and I occasionally lecture, but mostly advise
he
grad
does a good
students.
job teaching the jury in a little bit. And
What
all
about
of
professional licenses? Do you have any of those?
I'm a registered professional mechanical engineer in California, Washington, and Alaska.
And then in terms of professional societies, these groups of people that
I'm gonna
get
fast
together
forward a
to
little bit because I know a lot of
research
you
and
have already seen this
work on a
and
certain
you're
field or
hanging
you
out with
connect.
me. So let's see.
Bame's deposition, so we're showing them here as well.
Okay, but not in his trial testimony.
He's
We're
responding to
fighting
these.
about
You said deposition.
He also showed it in his trial testimony.
So
Oh,
direct-
trial deposition.
I was going to
Withdrawn.
say direct things to the judge, but
I recall this being flashed during
Withdrawn.
his deposition or during his trial testimony.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Scher. So you recognize this page?
I do.
And I was just describing it. This was shown in Dr. Bame's trial testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And he explained that these are his calculations.
That's right.
Okay, and there's another page as well. I think it's the one just before it, correct?
He's about
That's
to
correct. This is
bring
where he
down
starts the calculations for the ribs. We're concentrating on the
real
ribs here because that's what he
calculations on
says
Dr. Baines.
determines how the accident happened. He said the head injury doesn't matter for that. It's only the ribs.
Okay, great. So
They're
since
focused
I
on the
have
ribs.
very little idea what's going on there and you do, maybe explain to the jury what's going on.
Sure. Can we go to the page before this?
Sure. And maybe if you, it's just a little bit hard to hear.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a little better. Yeah, thanks.
So he's using some basic equations for what we call the center of mass to figure out what happens when someone falls to the ground. Center of mass is if you were to balance someone on your finger, the point that you'd hold them at so that they stay balanced. It's usually a little bit
Hi, Colleen.
below your belly button, kind of midline front to back, midline left to right. And so if you took all the person's weight, all their person's mass and put it into one point, that would be the
This
point
drawing's
that
getting
you're
really
interested
light
in.
today.
So that's what Dr. Bame is doing in these calculations, is he's using that point for Mr. Sanderson. And this first part here, where he has this, that's an equation, X is position. So he's saying there's a certain distance that center of mass falls. And you can see that over here. That's 3.5 feet, or he does it in meters,
Fast forward until we get to the
1.0668
figure,
meters.
because
So
That's
center of mass
this
falls
is
to the
a whole
ground.
bunch of math
He's
that
saying that
none of
there's
us will understand.
no
Okay,
initial
I should not say that.
falling
There might
position,
be
that's
you
fine.
who are
No initial
intuitive
falling
or
velocity,
very
is
smart
velocity.
mathematicians here.
And then
but
he has 1/2
I could not
acceleration
understand anything he was
times
saying.
time squared. And that equation is
But he
correct.
Just proves that he's very,
Acceleration
very
here is the
Step down, whatever you need to do. Thank you.
can create lateral rib fractures. But that's not the only way. His arm could be out. He could land on the side and create lateral rib fractures. He could land on his side and a little bit towards the back. And Miss Paltrow could land on him. She could be fully on him, maybe with her buttocks or her back or some portion of her mass compresses his chest front to back, and that can create his rib fractures. There's a lot of different ways this could happen. I can't tell which one of those is right, but all of those are consistent with her version of the events. As they hit the snow, they would continue to move forward until friction slows them down. And it's also important to note, we haven't talked about the head injury, but hitting.
Sorry, let me rewind because I didn't realize I went too far.
For sure, to just before the collision, so we can focus on that and explain what you mean to show by this animation.
Maybe I can't. How do you?
You could press play again and it will get to it.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So take us through, if you would, Dr. Scher, what this animation shows from your point of view as a biomechanics expert.
Sure. The first thing that you should be aware of is that this is Miss Paltrow's version of the events. So,
Dr. Scher, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh.
Just maybe pull your mic.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that. The first thing to be aware of is this is Miss Paltrow's version of the events. So that's what we're showing here. And as we move forward, I'll talk about the physics, kind of like what I drew earlier with the center of mass and the rotation. And that's the idea. That's what went into this. But again, this is not exactly what happened. This is just one of the possible ways it could have happened. So we have Miss Paltrow in black, Mr. Sanderson in the blue as they move forward in time. It's her testimony that his skis slid between hers. There we go. She felt a contact directly in the back, along her back. It sounded like her buttocks as well. The person was grunting, pressing against her, but they were on their skis for a period of time. If in this situation, he's also moving to skier's right, which is in the left in this image, that will create, remember I had the force that was offset from the center of mass. That's going to create a rightward motion for her, but also create some initial rotation. Now, in this portion, there's a number of possibilities. She could be adding weight to her right ski because of the contact from Mr. Sanderson. When you ski, if you're in, let's just take a snowplow or what my kids call pizza position. If you weight the right ski, you turn left. So if she weights the right ski here more because of the contact, she's going to turn counterclockwise. The contact from Mr. Sanderson, if it's more to the right, will turn her counterclockwise. So as they're moving to the right here, there would be some counterclockwise rotation. And here, her ski can catch, or she could pitch to the side, or they could both pitch to the side. They could both lose balance. We're not sure what happens. But as they're rotating, they're continuing to fall. And Miss Paltrow's version has them spooning essentially as they're coming down together, which would make sense if their legs got caught up. If he was contacting her below her center of mass, where his right leg was contacting her right leg, her thigh in that area. Also consistent with Miss Paltrow saying that her right knee was splayed open at the end and she felt right knee discomfort. That all could happen there. So as she's rotating and he's rotating counterclockwise, they fall to the side. Now, at this point here in the animation, I guess maybe the next frame, if I can do it.
I know the spooning is just beyond.
Mr. Sanderson lands on his right side, maybe the right back. It's hard to say. If he lands on his right side, kind of like Dr. Boehm said, he needs to land on the elbow, that can happen. That can create lateral rib fractures. But that's not the only way. His arm could be out. He could land on the side and create lateral rib fractures.
One of my dogs is dreaming upstairs, so I'm sorry if you hear slight crying sounds in the background.
He could land on his side and a little bit towards the back, and Miss Paltrow could land on him. She could be fully on him, maybe with her buttocks or her back or some portion of her mass compresses his chest front to back, and that can create his rib fractures. There's a lot of different ways this could happen. I can't tell which one of those is right, but all of those are consistent with her version of the events. As they hit the snow, they would continue to move forward until friction slows them down. And it's also important to note, we haven't talked about the head injury, but hitting the back of the head or the side of the head. He could have his head turned. All of those are possibilities for him to contact his head on the snow. So that's not inconsistent as well.
Would it be helpful to show it in real time? You've been doing it kind of slow motion, which has
Sure.
also been very helpful. Maybe
I love
start
James.
from the beginning and
So
just
polite.
play it.
Objection lacks foundation for trajectory, speed, and direction.
Overruled, it's demonstrative of this witness's testimony only.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and
And- Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Dr.
this
Scher.
is from the beginning.
And if there's anything you want to comment on as it happens, feel free.
It's really cool.
I
to
think
see
that
it.
accurately reflects the version that Miss Paltrow testified to that matches the laws of physics and biomechanics as I understand them.
And would it be helpful to show, there's one other animation that has a little zoom in from the other angle. Would that also be helpful?
I think, yeah, it can't hurt.
Let's show that then. Permission to approach, Your Honor, for that.
Okay. What's the number of this animation?
This will be number 4. It's called Zoomed Inside.
What was the last one, James?
Number 5. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks. Okay,
Wait just a sec.
okay, Dr. Scher. So I'm playing you number 4, the zoomed in from the side version. Were you a part of creating this version as well?
Yes, this is the same animation, but from a different camera view.
Got it. And will this animation also help you explain the same things you've been going over with the jury?
It's the same thing, sure. Yeah, I think it also visualizes, it illustrates my opinion.
Okay. Your Honor, permission to show this animation.
Subject to the same objections by the plaintiffs, the animation 4 zoomed inside is received for demonstrative purposes only.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. So, Dr. Scher, maybe since we've already gone through this slow motion, let's just play this one from the start, and then you can add anything that you can provide to the jury from this angle.
Sure. Here, let's play first, and then there we go. I'll wait until the contact point.
It's really interesting to see where everybody
It's coming
was.
up. Here we go. There's contact, fall to the right. This one doesn't show the rotation quite as much, and we don't know the amount of counterclockwise rotation as well. There could be a little, there could be more.
Oh, see, so Christensen is right there, and Ramon is all the way back there. So I'm very suspicious that Ramon saw what happened, to be honest.
or less.
Right.
We're not sure.
But if you go backwards a little bit into the moment of the collision, this one maybe shows, does this one show the skis coming between the skis?
Yes, it does. And I think it's better visualized in this one.
Yeah, and again, what's the significance of that in terms of how the mechanism of the fall occurs?
Well, that's Miss Paltrow's testimony, and it works for the physics of them falling and rotating slightly counterclockwise. Frankly, if it wasn't both skis, if it was one ski between hers, the kinematics would be the same. For example, if his right ski were on the outside of her right ski, it wouldn't change the general kinematics. This is generally, and I keep saying generally because we don't know the exact details of it, this would work.
So if we flipped the positions of the parties and Mr. Sanderson was in front, Ms. Paltrow came from behind, using this as a good visual for the jury, we explain your opinions about what we would expect to happen.
Oh, I saw someone's comment here. Oh, yes, randomizer 1666. You said that as he approaches Gwyneth Paltrow from the side, that's the side that he has the blind eye. It is his right side. I think that's a really good point. That then he wouldn't have seen her, right? So I more and more, every piece of information, every witness we hear from just seems to confirm Gwyneth Paltrow's story. And I don't know. I'm really interested in seeing what happens with the jury, because we're coming up on, I think, 2 more days, right? Closing is supposed to be Thursday morning.
Happen
Um,
on Mr. Ramon's account, I should say.
Well, Mr. Ramon's account is very different because in Mr. Ramon's account, Mr. Sanderson goes spread eagle and his skis go out into that V and the inside edges catch. And that changes the kinematics, the motion. It's a very different version of what happens with the contact.
And in terms, I guess we've covered that. So maybe we'll wrap up here. You've covered a lot of things, a lot of new things, perhaps for members of the jury and those of us in the room. Will you
Yes.
Summarize for us what are the main points that you want to get across for the jury here?
Sure. The first is that Dr. Boehm cannot say with any accuracy that Miss Paltrow landed on Mr. Sanderson. His calculations are wrong. And when you look at the equations done properly, Mr. Sanderson can land on the snow and sustain his injuries without Miss Paltrow falling on him.
And if I may, Dr. Schur, was it your understanding that Dr. Boehm's opinion was that his account was the only possible way the injuries could occur?
Yes, Mr. Ramon's version was the only possible way. He said Miss Paltrow's was impossible, which I believe is false. I think Miss Paltrow's version is possible.
Right. And would you say that Miss Paltrow's is the more likely of the two accounts?
Well, considering it's the only one that matches with the physics of what would happen in contact, yes, I think so.
Okay, and I interrupted you. You were going through your main points. What was the next one?
I think we've covered it. The second thing is that Dr. Boehm cannot say that Miss Paltrow's version is impossible. That's absolutely wrong.
It sounds like you're saying, in contrast to Dr. Boehm, that there are various ways this accident could have happened. The injuries could have occurred for Mr. Sanderson. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you've evaluated the various testimony, correct?
I have.
And you've done a careful analysis from a biomechanical engineer's perspective on what different scenarios might be likely or how they would happen, correct?
Correct.
And is it your opinion that Ms. Paltrow's version is the more likely of the two versions that you looked at, Mr. Ramon's and Ms. Paltrow?
Yes. Once again, it's the only version out of the two that matches with the.
David, I wanted to answer your question very quickly. I think science holds a lot of weight in a courtroom because he's the only one who's really shown us, right, what actually happened. This is an expert for the defense. He always talks about, well, this is Gwyneth Paltrow's, story, and this is her position, and he's there to debunk Dr. Boehm, who was the plaintiff's expert, who says that the only way this could have happened was if Gwyneth Paltrow knocked him down from behind, which he clearly shows this is not true.
Laws of physics, the biomechanics of it.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell the jury that maybe I interrupted you on and you missed out on?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now, Your Honor.
So I skipped a lot of the direct because I wanted to get to this cross because, oh my goodness, you guys, for those of you who have not seen this, it is probably the most entertaining part of this entire trial that I have seen so far. It is, grab your popcorn.
Can you keep the screen there?
Sure.
You can turn it off. Well, actually, leave it on for right now.
On or off?
On.
Okay.
Dr. or do you prefer Dr. Sure?
Sure, that works.
Sure, Dr. Sure.
That is the wildest cross in the history
This
of
version right
crosses.
here. Can you back it up about to here on the scroll?
To here?
Yeah, and then go forward it out halfway between the last one. Okay, a little farther. Just before when Mr. Sanderson, who's also,
Maybe it's easier if you do it.
well, could you just go a little bit farther forward? Just go slow. I just want to get Mr. Sanderson, who's sometimes called Dr. Sanderson.
Mr. Jeter, would you mind putting on a remote that allows you to be picked up?
Okay, how about, can I use this?
Sure.
Is this working? Oh, wait, now it is.
Mariko, this is the best cross. You're right.
Okay, go a little farther forward, please. Okay, and then when we get, okay. Now, this is Terry Sanderson.
That's Mr. Sanderson, that's right.
Okay. So his right eye is, okay, go a little farther. Now, just another fractions, a little bit farther.
The coughing.
So you have his head turned. That's based on.
I'm not sure who the woman is. I think it was just an extra person they put in, or maybe they remembered somebody remembered somebody
Down the
else
hill.
there.
Is that what you're saying?
I believe his testimony is that he's looking at a woman who's a little downhill to the left. He notices her, looks at her. I don't remember what the exact words are.
Okay, go a little farther.
It's wild that no one was wearing a GoPro, right? Except maybe Terry Sanderson, who
So his head, his left eye would be looking directly at Miss Paltrow. He would see her, right?
I believe so.
And it's inconsistent with his testimony. He didn't see her at all
That's correct.
because, but he would see her there, wouldn't he?
I would think so.
Okay, go a little farther, just another fraction.
this expert does his best to not just burst out
Okay.
laughing at Bueller the entire time.
Now, in this picture, you don't have Craig Ramon in there.
Yes, because he's very far
How
away.
far above would this point be? Where I just pointed, how many yards would that be above? this
Counselor,
image
do you
right
know
here?
how a microphone
I don't
works?
know
You have
without
to
doing a
put it in front of
measurement,
your
but I'm
mouth.
concentrating on the collision between Mr. Sanderson and Miss Paltrow.
Well, Craig Ramon testifies he was about 30 to 40 feet above. So these objects are about bent over, maybe 5 feet high. So if you just flop over 6 bodies, we'd get to 30 feet. That would be about right here.
I'm not sure.
Well, you're an engineer, highly trained PhD. You can't even guesstimate that that would be about 30 feet.
I can't tell.
Thanks for
Would,
joining, John.
up here be 30 feet? Don't you think it'd be a lot more than 30 feet?
Probably, but I don't know.
Well, you helped create this animation. You don't know the distances in your own animation?
No, I've concentrated on the collision portion. That's the biomechanics portion.
Okay, who did the estimates or guesstimates of the distances of the bodies of the other people?
So that's going to be Mr. Boggart, who's going to be on soon, I assume.
Okay, so this animation doesn't have Craig Ramon in the scene at all.
Not at this point.
Okay. Is it because the defense doesn't want him in the scene? So to
He's not
discredit
there
his
yet.
witness
He's
account?
far away, counselor.
Oh, I don't think that's the case at all. You'll have to ask Mr. Boggart.
Okay, we will. Okay, let's see. Just go another little section.
He's totally eyeballing it.
You just tell me when. I'll keep going until you
Yeah,
say
just
stop.
go slow. I just want to go slow motion. Okay, now stop right there. Now, do you know the time, how much time from the initial, let's say, impact of their bodies to this point would be? You did this calculation. This is your bailiwick. What you're talking about
Do you mean in the animation or do you mean in real
right
life?
now. Yeah, from the impact to this point, approximately. Like a
Oh, counselor.
fourth of a second, a half a second, a tenth of a second. Do you?
Ms. Paltrow says that they're in contact for a little while, a few seconds before they fall over. So I don't know what it is in particular in this animation, if that's what you're asking.
So you helped design this part of the animation, so you don't know how far it is. You just guessed it.
Again, we don't know exact timing and distance. This represents an illustration of the version. So yeah, it is what it is.
It's an illustration of the version, but there could be wide variability in that version, right?
There is variability, but we have constraints on it.
The constraints are, it could have happened the opposite way, right?
The opposite way.
Miss Paltrow hit Terry Sanderson.
No, I don't think so. Not with the testimony that's given. We have two
No, I
versions.
don't
We have
think so.
Mr. Ramon's version, and we have Miss Paltrow's version. This is Miss Paltrow's version. Mr. Ramon's version is very different.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a second.
Oh, counselor. Maybe turn it off. I want to go to
You're
the
being paid.
Portland to help him. I'm almost,
Paid
I want to fly to Utah.
$4.25 an hour for this.
No,
Is it more than $4.25 an hour?
it is.
$4.50 an hour?
Yep.
500?
It's 500 an hour.
500 an hour.
Which is
And you
Normal
billed something
expert
over $10,000 so far for your work?
That sounds about right.
More than 15,000?
No, I don't think so.
So
No,
between
I don't
10 and
think so.
15,000. Okay.
he's so unflappable.
You can turn that off for right now.
I think that's probably better.
It's a close tie.
Please leave it
What's
Oh.
worse, his opening or this cross?
What's the best way to do I just disconnect it? Is that
Maybe this cross.
like that? Okay.
At some point, he tries to draw over his drawing. Is this when? Let me see. This witness is so enjoying himself. He's like, bring it, bring more.
No, you're here to teach the jury, right? The defendant's version, correct?
Teach the jury the physics that would be helpful in understanding how to assess the accident.
Very
So
neutral.
that's a no. You're not teaching the defendant's version.
I'm not teaching any version. I'm teaching the physics and mechanical engineering, biomechanical engineering that would help the jury.
I know it's hard for expert witnesses to say yes or no, but are you teaching the defendant's version?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Okay. Seemed like a simple question. Next, I'd like to
Bueller, ask better
talk
questions.
about, did you review Dr. Gibby's testimony at trial?
No, but I did see some of his trial testimony.
All of it or some of it?
Some of it.
Was it more than 10 minutes?
Probably, yeah.
More than 20 minutes?
Yep.
More than an hour?
I don't think more than an hour.
Okay.
He's just not going to help him.
You didn't disclose anything about hearing Dr. Gibby's testimony.
I'm not sure what you mean, but
What do you mean?
I did see it.
Okay.
Straighten your tie.
You've never disclosed to the plaintiff your reports or your testimony ahead of this trial, correct?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
Please approach. Look at Gwyneth. She's like, this is bad, but good for us. Okay, let's
Each other's
fast forward a little bit.
drawings, correct?
I don't know that I've seen that, but I don't have a problem with you drawing.
Okay.
Oh, they were fighting
So,
about him how to draw. I
You
realized I
testified
fast
that
forwarded
Craig
this.
Ramon says Terry was hit directly in the back and they went down, and Craig Ramon was somewhere above 30 to 40 feet.
Okay, I have to pause this because I fast forwarded it, but do you see that stick drawing there? So the doctor was trying to show, the person in front and the person in the back, and do you see like the happy face and the frowny face? I mean, it's just this whole testimony is just hilarious. But watch what Bueller tries to do here.
And it happened in a fraction of a second, correct?
Yes, the fall, I would agree with that.
Okay, less than a second.
Sure.
Okay. So there was a scream. And the scream occurred, and there was within a fraction of a second. And I don't believe Craig Ramon never testified where Miss Paltrow's skis were.
Correct.
So her skis could have been going underneath Terry like this. The pink ones would be Miss Paltrow's skis. Is that a version that is possible?
It is not.
It's you're saying it's not possible.
That is not possible with the version that Mr. Ramon states.
His version.
Okay, so this is where Bueller starts undermining Ramon's testimony, and this is where he should have just stopped, but just watch him. He just keeps digging and digging, and it's just awful, like a train wreck that you can't look away from.
Didn't talk about her skis. Now here, I'll draw what her body. The pink would be her body, still square in the back. Isn't that possible?
So no, with Mr. Ramon's version, if I may, that is not possible. So in this situation here, when Mr. Sanderson's skis go into a V, and I guess you're saying her skis are under his skis, which I'm not sure how that happens because the tips curve up, but we'll go with it. Somehow she winds up in this situation getting caught with her left ski around Mr. Sanderson, and she would not continue past 5 to 10 feet, and I would expect a twisting release of her left ski.
Well, that's her version. I'm talking about Mr. Ramon's version.
No. I'm talking about what you just drew for Mr. Ramon's version.
Mr. Ramon's version. Well, isn't it possible her skis could be pointing straight like this?
You guys,
And
I mean,
let me
it's
get it
just-
right here.
I can't.
So, yeah, so she could be going straight and she could be turning left and up and hit square in the back, but her skis are pointed this way. Isn't that another version?
So for her skis to miss. Oh, no, it's not.
Oh no!
Do you want me to
it's
explain?
not.
In a second. I'm asking the questions here.
There are going to
So,
be memes made from this guy
the,
in these drawings.
So are you saying that her body could not be turned while her skis are going in one direction or she's turning up to the left? Is that possible?
Not for Mr. Ramon's version. Is it possible in general? Sure. But in
Okay.
her version, I'm sorry,
Well,
in his version, no.
This happened in a fraction of a second.
Look
I
at
don't think
Gwyneth
Mr. Ramon
Paltrow. She's
testified
like,
that he has a videographic or
No,
photographic
Owen.
memory. Do you?
I bet Owens is wearing a mask so that he can hide his laughter right now.
Well, he's pretty particular in his testimony about how she was on Mr. Sanderson's back.
Right, and he could, you see the circle I have? Let's see, well, actually.
You know what you're drawing, counselor?
Maybe I could do it I've got it wrong.
Yes.
Let's do it the other way.
Look at the witness. He's like, yes, you got it wrong.
Her body could be like this, and her skis could be like this too. And people turn all the time while they're skiing, and their skis are going one direction, but their body is pointing a different. Right here.
Look at Gwyneth. She's like pursing her lips so that the jury
that?
doesn't see her laugh.
See you turning, sure.
That's possible, right?
What you're doing in general is possible. Are you asking, does that match with Mr. Ramon's testimony? No, and I'm happy to explain why.
I think Mr. Ramon's testimony is, it happens in a fraction of a second. Mr. Ramon, a professional wannabe freestyle skier, likes to talk about ski angles.
40 yards away.
The main part is the body. He saw the body, and then the bodies go down together, and she lands on top of him. You're saying that your versions, which you are not based on anything except your recreation of the biomechanics, are superior to an eyewitness. Isn't that what you're saying?
No, we have two versions of the accident. We have Mr. Ramon's version,
Oh,
and we have
sure.
Ms. Paltrow's version. I've assessed both using physics and biomechanics, and I'm sorry to say Mr. Ramon's version does not meet with the laws of physics. It's not consistent, internally consistent, and Ms. Paltrow's is.
Well, I don't think Mr. Ramon's version was designed to be consistent with the version of events. It happened in less than a second.
Wait, he just said that Ramon's testimony is not consistent with what happened. Is that what he just said? Did you guys hear that? Because, wait, do we need to rewind that a little bit? Just a little bit. Oh, wait, sorry. I went
Isn't
too
that
far.
possible?
I'm sorry, I went too far.
What part of Miss Paltrow's body hit Mr. Sanderson, did he?
He did not say. He said, well, here, I can tell you exactly what he said. He said,
Take your time.
he said squarely in the back. She couldn't have hit him in the back any better right in the middle than if she tried. And she couldn't have been back on his back any more than if he would have strapped her on the back, like a backpack.
Okay, but that doesn't mean her body was straight.
Might not be exactly straight.
Yeah,
Look
it could
at
be
the
off center.
defense. They're
Because she was
so happy right now.
skiing down. She's like this, and she hits him right in the back. Or maybe it was a little off center because Mr. Ramon only had the view for a few seconds. And then her arms wrap around, her arms could have wrapped around Terry Sanderson, right?
I don't think there's any testimony about that. Is it possible? Maybe, but
Well,
I don't
where
think
would they
there's
have gone? Down to the side? She went in like this?
She had poles. Look at her. Look at her.
in front of her.
Look at her. She's
I
like
mean,
a
most likely, don't skiers ski like this usually,
Often,
often? What are the other positions?
they can have her arms in more,
Okay,
have
so,
them out more,
so she could be like
have her arms
this
down
and
to her
turn like
side,
this?
and the poles heading back.
Okay.
There's all sorts of options.
So in that fraction of a second, Mr. Ramon saw the collision. The screen was up here. He turns his head, and she could hit him square in the back. She could have her, at that point, her body could have turned and possibly hit her, but the point is the skis could have been going at a different angle, one or the other, and still cause this crash. And your versions assume those are not possible because you assume that there's only one way, that their skis were going parallel to each other. This is your only assumption, right?
Wrong.
You
like wrong.
You made assumptions
Wrong.
that these are possible,
I looked at other angles. That's right.
and the testimony, though, you said there's no testimony about the angle of her skis from Mr. Ramon, correct?
That's true.
Oh, counselor. I think what plaintiff's counsel has done with this cross is that he has completely undermined Ramon's testimony and really hurt their case. Mariko, I agree with you. I think the $10,000 that they paid him was worth the money. Rand, it does not matter which way her body is pointed, the direction of movement is the same either way. Facts, totally facts. Verity, question, what are the possible outcomes? I'm gonna tag this and we will talk about that because I have thoughts about what those might be. He's finishing
You've
up.
made a lot of assumptions, correct, to make these animations, right?
Yes and no.
I thought that would be more than one assumption.
There are
That's
some
yes or no?
assumptions. Sure, more than one assumption.
Okay. Less than 100?
Sure.
Less than 10?
I don't know.
You don't know how many assumptions you made, correct?
That's right. Sure.
Okay.
He is like, I am trying so hard not to laugh at you right now, but I'm failing. It's like we're all failing. Just stop. Look at his co-counsel. He's like going like, oh my
I
God.
know counsel, Mr. Owens likes to do this a lot, like it's a touchdown.
What?
But-
What? Why?
On redirect, Mr. Ramon, did you see all of his testimony for this trial?
I don't know if I saw all of it, but certainly I saw a lot of it.
Okay. You saw the testimony last week, correct?
Is there any more than that?
There was a little bit yesterday.
Okay, I didn't see anything
Had nothing to
yesterday. I
do
was
with this.
traveling.
Had to do with that. Mr. Ramon reported what he saw the same day in the same week 7 years ago. And you're recreating this, what, about 5 months ago, correct?
I don't remember when it was.
Less than a year ago.
I don't recall.
You don't recall when you made your, consulted with Mr. Brill and made the animation?
This has been ongoing for a while. This case has been dragging on, so I don't know when it was.
Why does it matter?
So you've been
Just
working
ask
on
your
this for,
question, counselor.
let's say, more than 8 months?
Sure.
You don't know?
Certainly, we've been in contact with counsel for longer than 8 months.
And for the record, Your Honor, I'd like to move to strike all of his testimony because this wasn't disclosed improperly.
Okay, this is the best part. So what he's trying to do is he just wants to strike everything because he's like, Your Honor, this hurts our entire case, so I just want to strike it all. And then listen to what he says here. He says, I anticipate your ruling, but I want to put it on the record anyway because he knows how ridiculous this request is.
I anticipate the ruling, but I just want to, for the record, make the ruling.
It's overruled. It was disclosed properly, counsel.
Okay. What I'd like to do is
Stop.
understand that you've made a lot of assumptions, and the jury would like to know how reliable your opinions are. So how can that be reliable when you totally discount some major events like what the direction of Miss Paltrow's body was compared to her skis? And there is testimony about Miss Paltrow's body movement. Do you know that?
I guess I don't
Prior to the
understand.
crash, just prior to the crash?
What version are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
Do you know about the version of Carrie Oakes?
I don't think she saw the accident.
Have you read her deposition?
I have.
Okay.
No,
You realize she testified that one of the kids said, Mommy, watch us ski. And the kids were up there on the left. Miss Paltrow was down on the right, which would tend to show that Miss Paltrow was looking up to her left at the point of collision.
I don't recall that.
Okay. So you're excluding Carrie Oakes' testimony, correct?
That's wrong.
You're including her testimony?
I considered it, sure.
And are there any assumptions you've made based on her testimony?
Not in particular that I can think of, but there may be.
So could you speak up?
Not in particular that I can think of.
Okay. Not particularly that you can think of about Carrie Oakes' testimony, okay? Are you an expert on head injuries?
I'm comfortable talking about head injuries from the biomechanics standpoint.
Have you ever studied or held yourself out as an expert on concussion?
If it's diagnosing or treating concussion, no. If it's the biomechanics related to the formation of concussion, yes, I've done helmet research and head injury research, in particular for snow sports.
He's like, yes, I can answer anything you want to ask me. So just ask.
Did you apply any of your knowledge about concussion to this case?
I certainly looked at it, but Dr. Boehm was very particular in his testimony that it was only the rib fractures that allowed him to say that Ms. Paltrow contacted Mr. Sanderson from behind. So that's what I concentrated on for the jury.
And you ignored his discussion about the head injury.
Oh no, I certainly considered it.
And it's not relevant in this case.
Well, in disproving Dr. Boehm, it's not relevant, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay. Well, it's not clear you disproved Dr.
I'm happy to talk about anything you want to talk about, counselor, because I can answer any question that you have.
Boehm when you don't even know the direction of Miss Paltrow's skis at the
You
beginning
say
of this. It's also, I think, a big assumption to say what the body position of Miss Paltrow was when she hit Terry Sanderson in the back.
Sustained, and was there a question in there, counsel?
Just if that was accurate, I'll withdraw it.
Counselor, sit down, please. You see his co-counsel in the back, how he's rolling his eyes. He's like, please stop. Just stop. I think there's a strategy here that potentially they're trying to run out Owens' time, because remember, he's like been whining about how they don't have enough time to present all of their experts. But I think this was probably the wrong witness to try to run out the clock, because everything that's happening here is only helping the defense. I don't know if they realize this. Well, his co-counsel does back there. Look at his face.
So you've never studied rib injuries. Have you ever testified about rib injuries before?
Could you clarify what the question is?
Have you ever studied rib injuries and testified about them?
The judge is like making an objection to the defense, basically, because the defense is just loving this because this helps their case. So that's why they're making no objections here, because they just want Bueller to go on, because everything he's doing is helping their case.
In the past?
That sounds like two questions.
Have you ever testified about rib injuries in the past?
I don't recall, but it's
Okay.
likely.
Most likely you have.
I think so.
How many?
They're
Have you
common.
testified more than 100 times?
In trial, probably 35 times, something in that ballpark.
In total, under oath, have you testified more than 100 times?
Including depositions, yes.
More than less than 200 times?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I just had a thought. I'm about to go speak at my law school in a couple of weeks. I've been invited to go speak, and I will tell the professors there that this doctor here is textbook what type of medical expert you want to find, right? Someone who is prepped in this way. I don't actually think he had to be prepped. I feel like this is just who he is naturally, and he is amazing. He's unflappable. He answers exactly what is asked of him. Yes, no. He doesn't elaborate. And this is like every attorney's dream witness, if they're on your side, of course.
Let me just check.
Check if I should stop.
That's all I have for now. Thank you, Dr. Scher.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Goodness.
Mr. Bueller. Mr. Egan?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Scher, we'll just be real quick here. Did anything Mr. Bueller asked you change your opinion that Ms. Paltrow's account is consistent with the laws of physics to your understanding and Mr. Ramon's is not?
That remains the same.
Thanks.
Mr. Bueller?
He does
I
have a
think you said this
PhD, I
before, that
think.
you're an expert in the laws of physics, but you're not an expert in medical medicine or orthopedics or neurology, correct?
I am a biomechanical engineer. I am not a medical doctor. I do not diagnose and treat, but I do look at what forces and what motions create damage to the body.
Thank you.
That's all.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I call your next witness?
We call Paul Bogger, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So this
Your Honor,
is
before Mr. Bogger comes up to testify, we may want to take a 5 or 10-minute break. I want to address something with the court outside the presence of the jury.
We'll have to take one shortly anyway, so let's go ahead and do it now.
I don't remember what they're discussing here. But this next expert we'll skip because he's not as interesting. I want to get to the doctor after him because he is a really, really interesting
Ms. Van Orman?
Your Honor, pursuant to our motion in limine, Mr. Bogger's testimony is going to be significantly limited in this case. The problem that I am foreseeing is that I could be wrong, but it appears to me that counsel is going to try and use Mr. Bogger to then describe some further animations and place individuals on that animation. And I have significant concerns with that for a number of reasons. Number one, Mr. Bogger's not qualified to do that. He didn't take any kind of measurements, calculations, determinations of speed, force, physics, etc. in this case. But in addition, in his report, he does not make any mention of where people were, where they were placed. This would any kind of discussion of him talking about the animation, and if he was responsible for putting the people somehow on that animation, he does not describe that in his report. He doesn't talk that in his report regarding participating in an animation. He provides no diagrams in his report, no discussions of where.
Oh, so I guess this next expert is the one who actually did the animation. Mariko, that's Bones, right? I love Bones. David, I like this judge a lot as well. I mean, he is so incredibly patient. If you guys watch all the way to the end when they're talking about jury instructions and debating them, we won't get to them because it's just there's still like hours of this day left. But he is so incredibly patient with Owens, and there's some point where he actually helps Owens and says something to the effect of, you do not want an appeal, do you? Because if you do this thing, you're going to be opening yourself up to an appeal. And I was like shocked that he said that, but he is such a great judge. I mean, I think the judge in the Murdoch trial was also Judge Newman was amazing. I was just thinking that today. I wonder if judges just have to be really good with people, because this judge is so patient. So I would like to fast forward to see if we can find the next doctor that comes in, because he is it was very interesting that defense found a doctor like him. I don't remember his name. I hate that Owens is going to be the one doing the cross, because Owens is just terrible. We're not going to watch all of this, but we'll watch a little bit of it. Sorry, I want to like.
Was Stephen R. Edgley. That's a STEVENEDGLEY. Yep.
So just to give you guys a bit of background, thanks, Rand. So this next doctor, and I want us to try to be very kind to him, because he is a doctor that suffered a stroke in his 20s. And so he is someone who has suffered, severe brain trauma, injury. And I think it's very interesting that the defense hired him. Now, he speaks very slowly, but he's incredibly smart and intelligent. And I think, you guys let me know what you think in the chat, but I think they hired him to show that this is what a man with true brain injury looks like. And we saw Terry Sanderson yesterday, and that is not what he sounds like. He speaks very quickly. And this doctor basically states that Terry could have had some brain injury, but it was very minor and it resolved itself very quickly.
Okay, Dr. Edgley, are you employed?
Yes.
Where are you employed?
At the University of Utah.
And are you over the acquired brain injury division?
Yes. Physical medicine and rehab is my specialty, and I'm over that section.
How old are you, sir?
49.
Okay, and just background, undergraduate degree, where was that?
I studied psychology with a pre-med emphasis at BYU. My med school training was in Chicago at Loyola University in Chicago. And I did a 4-year residency in physical medicine and rehab at the University of Utah.
And then did you go there? Did you stay at the university?
Yes.
And have been for how many years?
Overall, 20, yes.
Okay, and do you hold an endowed chair at the university?
I do.
Do you teach? Are you a professor there?
I do.
And you personally had an acquired brain injury, is that true?
Yes. So I had a stroke in 2001, 21 years ago.
And did that event play a role in your area of study?
It did. I was initially matched for a residency training in ophthalmology, actually. I took 1 year off to deal with the recovery aspects of my stroke, and then began physical medicine and rehab residency training.
Are you board certified in your specialty?
I am.
You are a physician, MD, correct?
Yes.
And do you deal with people other than stroke people, other acquired brain injuries?
So in my practice, it's a very busy practice. 95% of my practice deals with acquired brain.
So sorry. I muted myself because I had to cough. I'm very sorry. So, what I was saying was, I was very optimistic that Owens started out sort of softer and was patient with this witness, but we can't watch the whole thing because I get so angry at him treating his witness like he's a hostile witness. So I'm so sorry about that. I muted myself to cough. But I was just saying that Owens just can't help being himself. I mean, I know he's like really worried about running out of time, but this is not the witness to be short with or to cut off his answers because you just look like a jerk when you're doing it to someone like this who has suffered a brain injury, who is just slower in responding.
Injury.
And what is that? As opposed to brain injury. Like if a baby is born with a brain injury, that's not acquired, right?
Acquired. So acquired brain injury encompasses strokes, traumatic brain injury, concussions, and a myriad of other brain injuries related to surgery, anoxia, near drownings.
Anoxia is like oxygen deprivation.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe a child who's found at the bottom of a swimming pool, rehabilitated, brought in, and they come and see you.
Yes.
About how many patients have you seen in your career?
So I have, let's see, I see about 15 separate encounters per day over 20 years. That equals over 65,000 patient encounters of acquired brain injury.
Wow.
Thank
He is
you.
an expert.
And do you consider yourself an expert in brain injuries?
Yes.
And the fact that you have personally had an acquired brain injury, does that also give you additional insight?
It makes me kind of unique in that I have experienced.
Have you reviewed voluminous records in this case?
I have.
I have.
So the court complaint, records and reports from the VA hospital, is that fair?
Yes.
About 1,000 pages or so.
Yes.
And deposition transcripts, Gwyneth Paltrow, Terry Sanderson, the daughters, Sam Goldstein, Dr. Fong, all of those.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And medical records also of the Park City.
Apparently, Owens was the head of the Utah State Bar. somebody said that in one of the chats. And I was very surprised. But you're probably right. As a civil attorney, a lot of trials, I would say cases, not trials, 95% of cases settle, right? So I bet you Owens has not done a lot of trials, if I had to guess.
City Instacare, Cognitive FX, Sam Goldstein. Have you reviewed those?
Yes.
Do you believe that you have the foundation to render expert opinions in this case?
I do.
The jurors have already heard that the patient, or I should say Mr. Sanderson, has a mild traumatic brain injury. Do you agree or disagree?
I think I have poured over the records. I think it's possible,
Okay.
but the testimonies are inconclusive.
Did you tell me that the most important things you look at are how long they're unconscious and how long they've lost their memory, amnesia?
That's correct. So that's going by the Cantu concussion grading system, which is preferable because it's the most objective and not relying on subjective symptoms from any patient.
Okay, so a concussion, if you hear someone has a concussion, are those your two lead questions? How long were you out and how long was your memory out?
Exactly.
All right, and apply that to Mr. Sanderson, would you?
So it is unclear whether he lost consciousness. Now, let me be clear. So let's define consciousness. So when you are unconscious, you are totally lifeless and limp. Not speaking, not moving. That's unconsciousness. I based on the records, there is a very inconsistent evidence that he did in fact lose consciousness. So I am not able to state that conclusively.
Okay. What do we know about, for instance, Christensen was the ski instructor. He testified to no loss of consciousness. You with me?
Yep.
And Brad Falchuk has not gone yet. Ms. Paltrow has stated no loss of consciousness. Craig Ramon did say loss of consciousness. Have I sort of summarized some of the people who talked about that?
Yeah, and the plaintiffs himself has said, loss of consciousness, 5 minutes, and then again a later 10 minutes.
Okay,
Yes.
so Mr. Sanderson kept changing what he
Yes.
was telling people, right?
Uh,
I don't know, a few seconds, 5
Yes.
minutes.
Owens, let him answer. Sorry, I'm very irritated by people who are like bullies.
Then 10 minutes. True?
Yes, and I think that is why it's important to clarify loss of consciousness with the post-traumatic amnesia. So, the plaintiff will not remember how long he was unconscious, if at all. He will remember the first.
So the doctor's making a really great point right now, right? People who are knocked out don't remember how long they're knocked out for. I mean, for any of you here, and let me know in the chat who have maybe fallen from somewhere, like maybe you're out for like a second, right? I think a lot of us have probably experienced that. But to be out for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, as Terry Sanderson has stated that he would probably not be able to remember how long he was out. It would have to be someone around him who would state that. And I truly believe that if he was out for even 2 minutes or 5 minutes, the people at Deer Valley would have called an ambulance to take him off the mountain, because they take these things very, very seriously. I mean, skiing is inherently risky, right? We've all kind of heard that phrase several times by now. And I think people who work for a ski resort like Deer Valley would have been, had the training drilled into them that anytime anyone loses consciousness, I mean, Whitney Smith, right, who's the angel that Terry Sanderson, has described her as, stated that if she had heard at all that he lost consciousness, then she would have attended to him as such. And remember, the entire time that she was with them, Ramon never said once that he was unconscious. I really felt like Terry didn't know what happened. And then later on, it was like Ramon spurred him on and said, oh, by the way, remember, you passed out, right? Like, and it's Gwyneth Paltrow, and I the more and more, and this is just my assumption, right? But I think things line up to indicate that Ramon is maybe the instigator here. I don't know. It seems like he's the one with all of the facts, right? And the information. And he's just kind of like has almost filled in the gaps for Terry Sanderson. And Terry Sanderson's like, oh yes, this is what happened, right? And these are the facts. And I think this doctor basically is refuting that he really suffered the type of brain injury that he is claiming that he suffered.
A memory he had of that event.
Okay.
And
So consciousness, I heard you say 5 minutes, and I just want to be clear. One of the ways we rate sort of the severity of the concussion is very short to no concussion, up to 5 minutes, and then over 5 minutes.
So
is that true?
So to clarify, no loss of consciousness, but post-traumatic amnesia is a grade 1 concussion.
Thank you. Whitney Smith, I guess, was another provider who said no loss of consciousness. Are you aware of that testimony?
I don't recall.
Okay,
Yes.
Whitney was the toboggan person.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
she asked it. She quizzed them, I guess. But let me move on. Okay, so even if Ramon's testimony is believed, that would put him only in the second category, less than 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, and first category is essentially no loss of consciousness.
Yes.
Okay, now let's go to amnesia. Applying what you've learned about Mr. Sanderson, how long was his amnesia after the collision?
That is also very ambiguous and multiple reports. I hear and read that he had a conversation with Eric Christiansen, which he does remember, which was, traumatic in his opinion.
So Sanderson remembers Christensen yelling at him. True? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that is the allegation.
Tam, I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible.
Yes.
Okay. And he remembers his friend, Craig Ramon, talking to him. Are you okay? Are you okay? True?
Yes.
Okay. So what does that tell you about like length of amnesia?
It was brief, if at all.
Okay. So you said that two big things we look at for severity of concussion is how long they're out and how long they can forget things.
Yes. And I will add, people experiencing brain trauma have a period of fogginess, and as the plaintiff himself said, quote, I rung my bell.
Okay. At one point he said, I rung my bell. I hear you. Go ahead.
So I am not able to say, it is probably, it is likely that he did have some confusion, but if he had no loss of consciousness and no post-traumatic amnesia, it can't really be called a concussion.
All right. Fair enough. And confusion, let's just talk.
Oh, interesting. So the doctor is saying if you don't have amnesia, then you can't really call it a concussion. So if he had a concussion, maybe it was a very minor one. Because remember when Terry Sanderson testified yesterday, he was doing this weird thing. He was like, oh, yes, my brain, I felt my brain like rewiring itself. And it was a very interesting way to describe it. But he remembered his name, and remember Whitney gave him those 3 words, right? It was Blue Snow 24. And he was like, oh, this is a brain test. I'm going to try really hard to remember this because I want to, I don't know, do well on a test. But that's not how brain injuries work, right? If you have brain injury or you suffer a brain trauma, then no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to remember those 3 words. And I think what the doctor here is saying is if you suffer from a longer length of amnesia, it corresponds with how severe your brain injury is. And thank you all in the chat for sharing your brain, injuries and having been knocked out. And I'm so sorry, Tam, to hear about your story. I've worked at a domestic violence shelter for over 10 years. So that just, it kind of breaks my heart. I thank you for sharing your story. That always helps other people. But sorry, it's just it always makes me upset. But yes, so he's basically stating that Terry Sanderson, if he suffered any kind of brain injury or concussion, it was very, very minor. That probably would have resolved itself very quickly and should not be affecting him 7 years later. Let's rewind a little bit and see. So I think what ends up happening, this is his cross. Let me
Count
see.
for Terry Sanderson's inconsistent testimony about how long he may or may not have lost consciousness.
Yes.
So that is a very real possibility in this case.
Yeah, actually, you cannot comment on your own unconsciousness.
Gotcha. So then we would be forced to rely on the testimony of those that were there or those that reported what they had seen.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to summarize what happens for the rest of the trial because, um, I mean, the rest of the day. So basically, they read into testimony 3 depositions, right? They read into, um, for the jury, they read Carrie Oakes, who is, I believe, Apple's ski instructor, and basically, it was a like a comedy because the woman attorney for the plaintiff, sat in the witness chair reading the deposition, and she was like loving it. It was like her day on the stage, right? And then the female attorney from defense side was, asking her the questions, and basically from her deposition, it showed that they were trying to prove, right? Plaintiff was trying to prove that the kids for Gwyneth Paltrow kept saying, "Mommy, we want you to watch us ski," and they wanted to prove that Gwyneth Paltrow was looking back. But Carrie Oakes basically just kept saying, no, she was looking forward, and you can certainly look to your side and still see your kids, but there was no one in front of her." And she repeated that so many times, that there was no one in front of her. There was no one in front of her. So I actually think that testimony really helped defense. And it was interesting that the plaintiff was the one that wanted it read into the testimony. Oh, yes. And Owens said, let's call the witness to the stage. And then he's like, "Oh, no, I don't mean stage. I mean pulpit." And I was like, huh, okay. How about just the witness stand? It was very strange. I mean, Owens is a strange bird sometimes. And then the 2 kids' testimonies were read into the record. And I'm not quite sure what, I mean, I guess Moses' deposition was a little more interesting because he remembers her saying the F word, and she was very upset. His mom, I mean, Gwyneth, was saying the F word, and he was, hadn't said that before. He hadn't heard her say that before, and that she was very upset because this man ran into her. And Apple was a little less helpful because she was already down the hill, remember? And she basically said that she didn't remember very much. I'm not quite sure how those 2 testimonies helped their case, but remember, Owens was very, very interested in having that read into the record. So, and then at the end, they are arguing over jury instructions. I think the timing, right? Owens is complaining they're running out of time. They're running out of time. They're supposed to have 8 experts. They've only done 2 today. That means they still have 6 left. I'm not quite sure how they're going to fit that all in tomorrow. They might have to just pick, which ones they want to, which ones are most important to them. I mean, Owens kept asking, how strict is the timing? And the judge is like, strict. And he said at some point, "This is trial. Get over it. This is how it is." And I was just loving it because it was amazing. Oh, and fake Moses. The guy who was reading Moses' deposition was chewing gum. I mean, Emily D. Baker was losing her mind because he was chewing gum. And I totally agree. It's super disrespectful. I kept waiting for the judge to say, "Counselor, please spit out your gum. Now, there was some debate. Maybe he was a law clerk and maybe not an attorney, but I was very, very surprised that he was chewing gum. I think the plaintiff has rested. They have rested. But they still have to, defense still can call Terry Sanderson for their cross because they haven't finished. I think they were trying to keep him towards till the end when waiting for all the witnesses to have testified before they ask him any, last questions that they want to ask. Okay. Will you guys let me know if you have any questions? There were a few that I tagged that I wanted to just read. Verity, you said, perhaps I'm being too kind, but I feel like Ramon took it upon himself to fill in some of the gaps for Sanderson of the incident, and they've both convinced themselves that this whole story is true. I think there's something to be said about that, right? Because it almost sounds like Sanderson couldn't quite remember the details, and then or it wasn't really that big of a deal, right? Because remember, he spent 2 hours with Whitney waiting for the car. I don't know why the car took 2 hours to get for them to get the car. But he never once said that he wasn't feeling well, that he had a headache, that he was nauseous, that he was dizzy. And Whitney, gave him she did the pupil test. She said he didn't seem like he was having any, head injuries. And I think Ramon said, hey, that was Gwyneth Paltrow. She ran into you, right? Like, don't let her get away with it. I'm like, totally guessing. I have nothing to verify this, but this is just my assumption. Tiny Smith, you're saying, why is no one concentrating on the fact that Sanderson was blind in one eye, creating no depth perception? You need 2 eyes for depth perception. Why is that not being challenged? That's a really good point. I haven't heard that, actually, anyone bringing that up. It is true. I think he was blind in one eye. I believe it's been fixed since then. He's, I think, had cataract surgery since then. So I think now he has vision in both eyes. Verity, you had a great question. So at the end, what are the possible outcomes for this trial, right? Plaintiff wins, defendant wins. There is a third option. Third option will be the jury comes back. And remember, this jury just has to have come to a 3/4 majority, right? It doesn't have to be unanimous like in a criminal trial. 75% of them just have to agree that they believe either for the plaintiff or for the defendant, or they could decide it was a 50-50, right? It was an accident. Both parties are at fault. This is comparative negligence, right? So if it's 50-50, then neither side gets anything, which I guess, it is what it is, right? But at least Gwyneth Paltrow will have closure, and I think the person who will probably have a harder time at this is maybe Terry Sanderson, because he will have to pay his attorney's fees unless his attorneys came on a contingency. I don't know. Let me check really quickly if oh, is that right? Cataracts was on the good eye. Let me see here. Let me Oh, did the doctor characterize Terry as a hypochondriac? Look, I think he has, I think they said something like he went to the doctor 72 times in the last 10 years. Now, to be fair, he does have a lot of pre-existing conditions. He did have, I believe, prostate cancer, so he probably had a lot of doctor's visit there. So I don't want to judge that. But I don't know about him being a hypochondriac or not. What was Kimmy Locker? What did Kimmy Locker say? Because, oh, okay. How was Owens allowed to present a list of prior medical treatments received by plaintiff? More than half had nothing to do with skiing or this case. Oh, yeah, I don't even want to touch on the ED thing. I mean, that was just ridiculous. I don't know why, but some of the issues that they brought up was like heart palpitation and different things that could potentially just indicate, right, that he had pre-existing conditions that have contributed to his kind of general deterioration of his health as he's getting older. I think maybe that's what that's what they're trying to prove, that he was sort of unhealthy before, and with old age, he's just progressing in that same manner. I think maybe that's what they're trying to prove. Mariko, you're saying, oh, you're blind in one eye. No way can I safely downhill ski unless I'm surrounded by instructors. I just cross country now with friends. Huh. Interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. So the eye is still blind as a result of a stroke. Okay. I did not know that. I thought it had been fixed already. Testimony was that he had a stroke in one optic nerve, leaving him blind in that eye, and that he has some impairment in the other eye. So David, you're saying his and her fees. So typically the winning party would be able to get their attorney's fees paid by the losing party. And that's only fair, right? So if Gwyneth Paltrow wins, then she gets to receive attorney's fees from Terry Sanderson, because if he didn't bring the case, then she wouldn't have had to defend herself, and vice versa, right? If Terry Sanderson wins, then he gets attorney's fees in addition to damages and whatever the verdict is. Right. So mostly Owens was commenting on the numerous health issues prior to the collision. Right. Plaintiff has stated that his quality of life had, deteriorated, and he states that it's because of Gwyneth Paltrow, right? And I think all of the experts are showing that he had pre-existing conditions. His ribs have healed, unless you guys have heard otherwise, because I haven't listened to every single minute of the trial, but I haven't heard that his ribs haven't healed. His brain injury probably isn't as severe as he has indicated. As this last good doctor has stated, he didn't have any amnesia. He didn't have anything that would indicate that he was knocked out for a long time. So, connect the dots. I think a lot of that was overkill, but it was established that he was in poor health before and after the accident. The accident wasn't the cause of all his problems, like he's represented. I think that's true. Where do I David, I assume you mean me. I really, as an attorney, it's my job to read people, and I believe Gwyneth Paltrow's story more and more. And also the fact that she is willing to come to trial and come, because look, if she was at fault, people would have settled this out 1,000%. I work in Hollywood. People settle things all the time. If there was any reason, I mean, that's the biggest factor for me. The fact that she's willing to come to court just shows me that she believes she was in the right, and that she did not, hit Terry Sanderson from the back as he claims, and she believes she can win, because if she did what Terry Sanderson says that she did, she would have just settled this out, and it would have just ended it. Because do you think she wants to be on national TV every day going through this? I mean, she had to go through trial, I think in 2017, because she had a stalker for over 10 years. And so she hates this, by the way. I think celebrities love their privacy. They hate to be on screen unless they're getting paid millions of dollars for it. And she hasn't acted in a long time. I mean, okay, I know the Marvel movies, but she, because Iron Man no longer is there, she isn't in those movies anymore. So I don't think she has acted in a long time. I think just based on what I know of celebrities working in Hollywood and how often settlements happen, based on all the testimony that I've seen, I mean, Craig Ramone and Terry Sanderson do not seem like credible witnesses to me. So I think, I think we need to call it a night because it's really late here. I mean, I'm up filming my videos or scripting or commenting on my long videos. But I really just wanted to cover this with you and practice my, comfort level of being in front of a camera without my editor, editing out all my flaws. I think, at first I was like, oh, I don't want to do lives because you catch all those words saying I know or like, or the word right a lot. So this has been so much fun. I will try to come back tomorrow night, and the trial only has 2 more nights. I don't think there's going to be another trial until May. The prelim hearing for Alec Baldwin, which is going to be 2 weeks. You guys, 2 weeks for a prelim hearing. Prelim hearings are usually supposed to be 1 day. I can't believe the DA has like 25, 45. I can't remember right now. It's late. Like so many witnesses that they want to call. Because remember, the judge could dismiss the case at the prelim, and Alec Baldwin has, he's had a few wins lately. And I think the DA is feeling like they have to go on the defense a little bit because Alec Baldwin has excellent attorneys at Quinn Emanuel, which is one of the best litigation firms, along with Glazier Wild, who is representing Victoria Alonso for the Marvel lawsuit, which is the next long video that I'm going to record. Thank you all so much. Oh my God, Mariko, I can't believe it's 4 a.m. where you are. Thank you so much for joining. If you guys would be so kind to hit the like button on your way out, it means a lot to me. If you haven't subscribed, it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys tomorrow night. I hopefully a little earlier, but I didn't want to take away Ian's people from his live stream. So I was trying to be respectful and waiting for his live to end. Thank you so much. And you have a great night. Remember, we're all born perfect and we forget sometimes, especially when it's stressful or you have sick kiddos or things are going wrong. But, I think I wanted to share something with you guys. It was really sweet. So I am a big believer in The Secret. Just this idea that if we surround ourselves with good thoughts, then good thoughts will keep coming to us. If it's, it's this idea of whatever you focus on, that's what you get more of. So if you focus on negative things, then that's what you'll get. And the other night I was talking to my son, who is 4, by the way, 4. And I said something to the effect of, I'm really stressed out about this thing. And, I was stressed out about not hitting 20,000 because my channel had become stuck for a little bit. And he said, well, if you keep thinking about bad things, then you'll scare away the thing that you want. And I was just blown away because that's exactly how The Secret, the idea of energy works, right? That if you focus on bad stuff, then you will scare away the good things in life. And I just realized, what? I love, just reminding myself how to be grateful for things. So thank you so much, everyone. I will see you guys soon. Okay, bye.